Hey, y'all, and welcome back to Southern Fried, a soul-grown podcast that explores the South through its people. Y'all are in for a treat today as we got to talk to Jamey Shirah, the CEO of Revival Restaurant Group, an Atlanta-based hospitality group focused on building places where genuine hospitality leads. They have restaurants in Atlanta and in Birmingham, some of which I have gone to and, in fact, love. But getting to talk to Jamey was great. He talks about growing up on a farm in Georgia, how that shaped his leadership style and what Revival is based around. He talks about the restaurants that Revival has, where they're not just a service industry, but they're a hospitality industry based on building teams. Not just restaurants, not just food to throw on the table, but true connection with the people who are there working and experiencing what they're getting. So I hope y'all enjoy this conversation with Jamey, a guy that's a true Southerner, grew up here, loves the South and what it means, and puts that into what he does with Revival. Now enjoy the show. Well, hey, we are welcoming in Jamey Shirah today on the Southern Fried Podcast. Hey, Jamey, how you doing?
Hey, how are you, Charlie?
I'm good. It's been a long day, but a good day, and I'm glad to get to sit down and talk for a little bit and get to chit chat with you.
For sure, yeah. Excited to be here. It's nice to end the day on a relaxing conversational note.
Yeah, it's no business. We're just, getting to talk and hang out, really, is all it is. I like to ask sometimes guests, are you a big podcast guest person? Are you appearing on them a lot? Is this number, one, or is it you got a lot under your belt?
Yeah, this is probably, I don't know, I'm definitely in double digits. I don't know if I'm at 15 or so,
Okay.
but somewhere maybe 12 to 15, something like that. Look, it's always awesome to be able to get on and kind of tell your story and
Yeah.
tell your why. And so I always welcome the ability to do so. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do that, man, because it's really important for us, for our company, and for the people that are part of our teams.
I love to hear that. Well, I'm excited to hear about your why as we get to just kind of talk and get to know each other a little bit. But I usually like to start my episodes by really getting just to know the guest as a person and who you are, who Jamey is. And a way I like to do that a lot of times is just to kind of, go back to where everything started for you and just ask where you're from and kind of how that has played into your life. So tell us a little bit about where you're from.
Yeah, I think the title of your podcast is probably a good slogan for my hometown. I actually grew up in grew up in a very small community called Hopeful, Georgia, which is the outskirts of a town called Camilla, which you may have heard of. People from kind of central and Atlanta and eastern Georgia know Camilla because it's one of the towns that you drive through on the way to the beach.
Okay.
If you haven't heard of that, Camilla is part of the metropolitan area of Albany, Georgia, which a lot more people have heard of. But basically, I'm from like the void of Southwest Georgia. So we're an hour from Albany, an hour from Tallahassee, 30, 40 minutes from Thomasville, an hour from Dothan, literally in the middle of nowhere on a farm. So, yeah, I got quite a lot of Southern fried dishes growing up.
I like that. I like that could be the slogan of your town is Southern Fried is
Yeah,
good.
for sure.
Um all right, but also growing up down there, tell me a little bit about like did y'all have like a family farm, would farm be what you
Yeah, oh
use
yeah,
to
yeah,
describe it?
absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I grew up on a um, kind of a second generation. My grandfather started our farm in Hopeful, and they were conventional farms. So we grew cotton, peanuts, soybeans, corn, wheat, kind of whatever the market was
Okay.
demanding at that time. Yeah, we farmed upwards of like 6,000 acres at one point. And my dad kind of grew. He inherited a lot of that. Him and his brother, my uncle. So yeah, my dad and my uncle were um, pretty big time conventional farmers. But before that, we started off with not a whole lot, and uh, something that was near and dear to my grandfather and near and dear to my family and still near and dear to me is quail hunting. So as part of like a side gig to kind of make some extra money back in the 90s when farming was incredibly tough, kind of some similar conditions to what you have going on now. My dad take people quail hunting. And that grew and grew and grew, and eventually they decided to incorporate a business and start, a commercial quail preserve. We had a lodge. We had, white tablecloth dinner. We had a classically French trained chef from Germany. We took all my grandmother's recipes and kind of chefed them up a little bit. So
That's
I've been
awesome.
in this my whole life. So kind of the South, Southern hospitality, entertainment, has been part of who I am. And then I think the odd way that that intersects with farming and, being, part of that kind of that local community is something that is really important to our brands too, where we try to use as many locally sourced people as we can, try to find small farms for our boutique products and stuff. So yeah, I'm from a farm, like straight up.
Well, that's cool because I was gonna ask, like, do you feel like growing up small town, growing up, working on a farm, being around that has like shaped kind of, not just what you do now, but kind of who you are and your identity as a whole.
Yeah, I think that growing up on a farm absolutely shaped everything about me today. And there's a couple things that I can kind of point to directly.
Yeah,
We were always raised to be, super respectful and kind, and with the kind of Southern hospitality being at the core of everything we do.
sure.
My grandmother did we didn't have cotillion, like kids in bigger cities do, but my grandmother would host, quote unquote cotillion classes with us and teach us how to eat and teach us our proper manners
Would
and
would she
teach us.
invite like other kids from the neighborhood to
No,
come?
no, just our
Okay,
family because we
good,
had like
good.
six, 4 to 6 cousins at any point
Okay.
in time, maybe upwards. We had 13 cousins on my dad's side. So
Oh,
during like
oof.
holidays and stuff, and so it was like, how to play silverware
Yeah,
properly
yeah,
and
yeah,
how to serve people properly and all that. So that was something that, I kind of got at a younger age, which I'm super grateful for. Um, Two, if you're ever going to be successful in farming, you better know how to work your ass off. Plain and
yeah,
simple. There's, I live, especially considering my dad farmed and did the quail thing, which was two different, like they're like opposite seasons, right? A lot of your peak summer, spring to like early mid fall is farming, and you're gone at sunrise and you're home after dark. And then quail hunting starts in September, and you do that all the way through February and March. There were weeks and weeks where I like wouldn't see my dad because he was leaving before I got up in the morning. He was coming home after I went to bed.
yeah.
And my grandfather, and my uncle too, they're my grandfather's one of the hardest working people I've ever seen. He actually he was a carpenter, he was a electrician, he could do plumbing, he could master builder.
Everything.
He bought and owned and ran the newspaper at one time. I think he was a sheriff or a deputy sheriff at one point, deacon in the church, and the guy just never stopped. And
Yeah,
having that example with my dad, my uncle, my grandfather, I cannot overstate how grateful I am for that and for those people being again huge, figures of the church. It's like you didn't miss Sunday church, you didn't miss Wednesday night church. Like that was our life. That's how we did things.
yeah,
And I know that, as an aside, not many people get that opportunity to have not only one incredible role model, but three. And I think there's something special about growing up on the farm, especially with your family right there, that you get that. And so that's, another thing that really shaped me, and then also, when your dad's off working and you're not in school and you've got summers at home, there's a lot of time just messing around on the farm. And we being the large conventional farming operation that we had by the time I'd gotten 10, 12, 13, 14, 15.
yeah,
um like when I wasn't working, I was piddling. We had, welders, we had cutters, we had, you know 5-ton, 10-ton presses. We had,
yeah.
huge equipment. So I was building stuff. I was making stuff. I was fixing stuff. A lot of stuff I was fixing was stuff I was breaking, and I was too afraid to tell my dad that I'd broken it. So I was trying to fix it before he found out.
Relatable. Yeah, very relatable.
But that's I think life in general, a huge, so two of our biggest core values in our company are resourcefulness and grit.
Yeah,
And those two things, if you're going to live on a farm, you kind of have to have those things. Right. And so for me, it kind of just became a part of who I was. And man, in the restaurant space, you know, like our industry, which I call the hospitality industry, is never the same day to day. right?
Yeah.
You try to put as many systems and processes as you can to make it the same every day. It's just never going to be. And so like one day, your dishwasher goes out, oven stops working, your this thing stops working. Somebody, like a key personnel has a, fender bender coming into work and they can't get there. Like you're on your toes all the time, trying to be resourceful, trying to figure things out. And so, one of the biggest probably values that I got from growing up on a farm and really what shapes my identity and who I am today is like, just figure it out and get it done. Like those two things are so paramount to being successful in anything in life, but I can definitely draw a line directly back to that, growing up on a farm.
And so growing up and doing all that, did you, because it's so evident that it's a part of like who you are, of being on a farm, like instilled that in you. But did like, your family has the farm and then the quail hunting operation. Was there any point of you growing up where you're like, well, I think like the restaurant world, the hospitality business is something I want to pursue? Or was that kind of like
Not at
a
all.
path that took you to get there?
No, in fact, I was like, I was thinking about, I'm going to get a degree in finance or I'm going to, I'm going to go work on Wall Street or something. I don't
Yeah.
know why that always like I've always had an incredibly, I guess you say like adventurous mind. I'm the guy that's always like up to go do something that's different, unique and whatever. And, while look, there's incredible, values and memories and stuff I have of growing up on a farm. I wanted to move back to that farm the 0%. I
Yeah.
had no inclination that I was ever going to do that. In fact, I went off to school at University of Georgia and first semester lost my Hope Scholarship, which in Georgia, Hope pays for your
Yeah.
tuition, your books, and all that stuff. And my dad basically said, "Well," and I called him and I was like, "Oh no, I screwed up. Like,
Yeah.
what do you need?" And I made a 2.0 first semester, so you have to maintain a 3.0. And I knew that there was no way I was going to make a 4.0 my second semester because I already had all my classes and they were really hard.
Sure.
I called him kind of preemptively, like, because you don't lose Hope Scholarship until the end of the year. Like it's a yearly
Okay.
thing. So and he's like, well, I guess best of luck. You can come work here on the farm and make money or find a job up there to pay for school. And, being that like I said, I was never going to go back and work on the farm. I said, well, all right, I got to figure out like, how do I make the most amount of money with the least amount of hours? And bartending was that, right? In a college town, that's kind of like the holy grail of being able to make money at a popular college bar. So, started doing that, worked at a couple places, was managing a couple places. And then my bosses at the last place I worked at became my business partners in our first place in Atlanta, which was called the Ivy, which was a pretty well-known sports bar in the
Wow.
Southeast.
So it
So,
was okay. So you just were kind of thrown into it, and now
oh,
you
yeah.
have like this whole passion for what you do. Like that was the
Yeah.
initial you being in it.
Well, I think it draws back to like kind of talk about like my passion, like what's my why, right? My
Yeah.
why is inspiring, helping, developing people. I mean, it is there's nothing that gives me greater value personally than watching somebody grow and develop in their career in my company. And I have a huge responsibility to the people that commit to come and work for me to do that for
Yeah.
them. And we spend a tremendous amount of time in our company coaching and teaching and developing and one-on-ones and giving people books and going through, personalized leadership development and all of that. And I think that that's something that our society desperately needs. And that doesn't mean that I'm like some, big life coach or whatever, but like I can distill down a bunch of stuff from a bunch of different people and give them, information that I know has been successful for me. And again, I think that harkens back to the fact that I had those great role models in my life. And it's something that I feel that I have the responsibility to try to be that role model for other people and give them the resources, to give them the information, to give them the coaching, to give them the income, to give them the responsibility or whatever that ingredient is that they need to kind of get to that next level of their life. The restaurant space is a land of misfit objects, as people say, and there's people from every walk of life, every socioeconomic background. And it's amazing to see a group of people that disparate come together in the heat of service, head down, just busting out incredible food. And, you get to the end of service and everybody's high fiving and it's awesome. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't come with tons of not awesome stuff and,
Yeah.
hard fought battles and hard communication. But like, there's just nothing to me, there's nothing that trumps that for me personally. And I love to say that. And I selfishly say that the value that I get from coaching and teaching and guiding and watching somebody have that like aha moment is greater than anything that anyone else gets out of this. At least
Yeah.
that's the way I feel. Right. And so, yeah, it's, it really does kind of go back to that again, growing up on a farm and having those role models and shaping kind of who I am today and what's important.
I really like that. As we kind of start to really talk about like revival and all your restaurants and what y'all's core values are, I don't want to go too far without just it's a Southern podcast, so I do want to
Yeah.
hear you're a Georgia Bulldog.
Oh yeah.
Do you take a lot of pride in that? Like, are you a big Georgia guy? Are you at the games? Is that are you one of the barker? Do you bark at people?
No, I do not bark
Okay.
at people,
Okay.
and people in my group and in my friend group do not bark at people unless we're doing it to our friends who are Alabama fans as a joke.
There you go. There you go. But
Yeah.
you are a big Georgia Bulldog.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to know, do you follow Georgia baseball at all?
Yeah, we're pretty good this year.
Yeah, well, you did. Well, you came into my alma mater, Mississippi State, and swept us in Starkville, and that was terrible.
First time since 2004.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
starting pitcher during that rotation, one of them is one of my best friends. So that's a really funny
Well, how about that?
little note there. But yeah, baseball, we have an incredible baseball program. They've invested a lot of money into
Yeah.
the baseball
Yeah,
program in our facilities
I
over the
hate
last
it.
several years.
Stop giving Georgia nice things. Y'all have enough, I feel like.
Well, we better do something with our basketball program because to be, such a promising team and just absolutely bomb. And then we lose all of our players to the portal. It's just like something's going on there. But yeah, I'm a huge, and I didn't realize you're a Starkville guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart actually grew up like 15 miles from where I grew up in
Oh,
Bainbridge.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we have some kind of mutual relationships, and then we have a bunch of mutual friends because he went to Georgia, obviously, and a bunch of the guys he went to school with, I've become friends with, and so it's just a really cool kind of full circle thing. I'm not friends with Kirby, just to be clear, but by proxy, I feel like we have a relationship. But big Georgia fan. In fact, I'll take this moment since we're on a podcast to talk
Go
about
for it, yeah.
the fact that, unbeknownst to me until a month ago, Georgia now has a restaurant and hospitality program.
Nice.
And they started that like 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I didn't know about that and I wasn't involved in that at all, considering, I graduated from Terry, which is our college of business. But, this is a huge program for us. I think it's a huge need. I think that as our economy continues to move into this service economy versus production economy, the restaurant space is only going to need more and more awesome people. So it's incredible that people are choosing that as a college career because we need as many educated people as we can in the industry. I think that the rising tide raises all ships. So that's really interesting and exciting to hear from UGA.
Does Revival ever work with Auburn's hospitality program down there at all?
No, because we are based in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But yeah, Auburn has one of the top in the country, and they put out some incredible projects, and they had some well-known and I'm just drawing a blank right now, chef, nationally known chef go down there and do a pop-up at their facility there for like 6 months. I think it was pretty cool. Yeah, they have a great program, and obviously Acre is a insanely incredible restaurant as well, and super proud of what he's done down there. That's awesome. Birmingham is a not so much as under the radar culinary city as it has been for a long time. And I've been like, it's like dichotomy of like, I want to preach from the mountaintops of how incredible it is, but also like it's this beautiful little gem that like people don't want to talk about. But obviously my business interests align with more people knowing about it. But also personally, I just really love it for like how unique and intimate it is, and it's exploding, man. And it's really cool to be a part of that. even if it's just a little bit. You've got, some of the greats there with Stitz and all that.
Yeah.
They have incredible culinary backgrounds, and to get the Michelin recommendations going on there, obviously James Beard's. Birmingham's a powerhouse. I think, per capita, if you were to look at it across your other major markets in the Southeast, it's at the top.
Sure.
There are some absurdly good restaurants in Birmingham, like
Well,
as
I
good as
used
anywhere in
to
the country.
and I used to be able to say like, oh, like, it's such a hidden gem and y'all like, what
Yeah.
but now it's like people are just here for food. Like people are coming to Birmingham and, staying here and trying a bunch of places. And so it's crazy how like huge it is.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Like, we noticed probably within about 6 months of opening Little Betty, and it was probably happening before that. And obviously, our brand probably didn't have any impact over bringing more people to the city or whatever. But like, we started noticing after like 6 months that every week we'd have anywhere from 2 or 3 to 5 or 6 tables that literally just came to Birmingham from Charlotte, Nashville, Huntsville,
Yeah.
Montgomery, somewhere in Mississippi or Georgia. And they're just staying at the Grand Bohemian or staying at, one of the hotels downtown, and just were there just to hang out and see the city.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's awesome. That's incredible. Yeah, there's a couple restaurants we want to try. We want to go see the zoo. We can go and catch a baseball game, downtown. And it's really cool. The BJCC and that whole area, which, we own the cantina in the Southern, which are in the Uptown district, has done, and with the Coca-Cola amphitheater there now, an incredible job of activating that area and Birmingham as a whole. Like, I mean, it's every year it gets better, and it's so incredible to see that. And, Birmingham still feels like one of those cities where like you're a part of it, and I know that may sound weird, but like, I live in Atlanta, we're in Atlanta. Like, I feel like I'm a part of like Buckhead because that's the community I live in, but I don't feel as much like I'm as, like I have any say or any like, not that I have any say in Birmingham with what happens, but you feel like you you feel like you're
I get what you mean.
more part of like what's happening in the city, because Atlanta's just so big that like, can you really have any impact? I don't know. But yeah, we love it.
Hey, Southern Fried listeners, hope y'all are enjoying this episode with Jamey Shirah. Just want to jump in real quick and say, you might have heard at the beginning of the show, this is now a Soul Grown podcast. Soul Grown's a digital publication that highlights the culture, beauty, and people of Alabama, the soul of the South, and making them proud. Just because it's an Alabama-based publication, though, doesn't mean we're going to stop talking all about the South. So if this is your first episode that you've ever heard of Southern Fried, welcome. So glad that you're listening. We interview people from all across the South. A lot of Alabama, as that's my home state. It's the state I love. But also from Mississippi and Georgia and Tennessee and Louisiana, South Carolina, anywhere that is in the South, because we love this place, we think it's awesome, and we want to tell the stories of the people who live here by talking to them, by getting to know them, and exploring the South through them. So, glad you're listening. I hope you're enjoying this interview with Jamey, and excited for this partnership with Soul Grown and to see where it takes us. And now, let's get back to the show. Well, okay, so you're mentioning a lot of your Birmingham places, and as a Birmingham guy, so Revival, your group, your restaurant group owns in Birmingham, Southern Kitchen, Uptown Cantina, which I've been to, great places. I just thought of this story, and let me share it with you real quick.
Okay.
Women's like round of 64 or 32 basketball going on in the BJC, which if you're listening and you're not from the Birmingham area, that's, big convention center. Also that night was a production of Les Mis, so there's a lot of people to see that. Something else was going on at BJCC. Like, it was just packed that night. And all right, I get in line at Southern Kitchen. My family is down there. We're going to see a show, and this Notre Dame guy, I'm sorry to his school. It was just the man. But him and he's trying to cut me in line to get to the hostess stand, and I'm like, all right, dude. And then he starts to like get on to the hostess at Southern Kitchen. He is like, they had just cleaned off the table, and he's trying to get to the table. And I just want to say, because the story just popped into my mind, the way that the like team at Southern Kitchen handled this very obviously irritated guy who wanted to sit down was just really good. And kind of full circle for me talking to you now. They handled it really well, and I remember thinking that night, oh, they did a really good job. So whatever you're telling them, keep going. You're knocking it out of the park.
Thank you. That's awesome to hear. I actually believe I recall reading that in one of our nightly recaps. Overly aggressive Notre Dame fan was trying to cut people. So you were the people in that story.
Dude, how about that?
But yeah, man, we spend again an inordinate amount of time on coaching and teaching, training, and
So
just
cool.
really hands on because there's a couple reasons why people don't have job satisfaction, and a lot of the time just because they don't have the tools, to do their job well. Whether they don't have the training, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the actual physical equipment or resources to do their job. So that's something that we never want to be a reason why things don't get done. So that's awesome to hear.
And so when you go to the Revival website and you look at who you guys are, one thing that y'all hit home, you talked about at the beginning of this a little bit, but y'all say you focus on genuine hospitality, which I think, not to put words in your mouth, but probably kind of synonymous to Southern hospitality. Like those two things go pretty hand in hand. So what is that for y'all that looks like that genuine hospitality that you're looking for when you're, training people and developing restaurants? What does that look like for y'all?
So first and foremost, you got to hire people that personally, that's who they are.
Yeah.
Right. Any team, any sports team, any organization, you have to define who you want to be. And then you got to go and hire people that are that naturally. To someone that's just not genuinely hospitable, to think you're going to get them to respond in a chaotic situation like you just described, they're going to default to who they are as a person. So first and
Yeah.
foremost, we have to describe who we want to be. And genuine hospitality is giving for the sake of giving and not for the sake of gaining. It's literally being there because you care about serving other people and you want people to feel a certain way when they come and when they leave. And if I can just get that message across, right? If I can get that MO, like the modus operandi, that's how we do things across our people and hire people with that same MO, then all the little miniature details aren't quite as important because they're going to take care of those things, and then if we back that up with strong, 5, 7, 10-day training regimens, depending on what position you're coming in,
Wow.
manuals, tests, all those things, and equip them with, the what to say and how to act and how to communicate and how to report things up and who to get when things don't go well and all that, then generally speaking, things are going to work a little bit better. So when we talk about genuine hospitality, it's hyper important for us to make sure that we hire people with that, in as who they are as a person.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just, when you go to a place that clearly the management, is cares about that, it usually bleeds through, which I think is cool to hear. You go to a restaurant, and so often I think for the consumer, for the customer, it's just like, all right, well, my waiter brought my food and somebody cooked it back there, but that kind of feels like all it is. But there's a whole thought process that goes behind, who these people are that are serving you and the food that's going on your table. So it's cool to hear, the thought process that goes on, through your mind when building all that.
Yeah, I think you just described the difference between service and hospitality, right? And a lot of people call our industry the service industry. And I did for a long time because you're really just focused on the operational side of things. But we're not in the service industry. We're in the hospitality industry, right? And service is a process or a sequence of steps that get food from the freezer or the refrigerator to the plate and then a receipt afterwards and then get guests in and out. That's service, right? And there's a whole, that's a whole side of the business that takes a ton of training and coaching and teaching. It's a lot harder to teach and train people on how to be hospitable. Again, you have to hire people that are already hospitable, that generally care about how do people feel? And it's not, and hospitality starts within the team, right? And I think often
Yeah.
that we miss, in our organizations where we miss is we don't hold that same line with our team. And so that's a super important goal for us is to make sure that first we start with our team and then we start with our customers and then we start with our, vendors and suppliers. And then we go to our investors and then our community. And that hierarchy of how we kind of approach what's important is super super valuable for us for identifying like where we need to be and what we need to think and what we need to say and how we need to act. We got to just hold ourselves to a super high standard.
Yeah.
When people ask me like, what's your goal in this restaurant, your goal with this space or whatever, obviously there are some goals about like what I want the food to be, what I want the standards to be. But my first and foremost goal is to create the strongest team that I possibly can. Right. And in order to do that, I have to hold myself super accountable.
Sure.
Right, to hold the leaders, and I have to hire really, really good leaders. And then those really, really good leaders have to hire really, really good, hourly and management under them. And that
Yeah.
chain of continuity of holding each other to high standards has to go up and down that chain. I can't be do as I say, not as I do, which seems to be pretty common in today's society.
Sure.
I then it all unravels, and I think that, we operate also, what would we call it? The law of the lid, which means that, a team is never going to be better than their leader. Right. And so my job is to always continue developing myself so that I can continue developing our executive team and some of our managers so that they can continue to develop the managers below them and it goes down from there.
Sure. I do think it's interesting though, because you're talking, y'all are in the hospitality industry, but at some point, there do have to be systems in place, right, to make sure things happen. But one thing I think is so interesting for y'all, um, all the different restaurants you have, like it's not one style of restaurant. Like you've got a steak bar and a Mexican place and a good old Southern kitchen that's just got good Southern staples. And so, like, I feel like that kind of makes it harder. So, what's the thought process behind? Are you just like, I want the best things possible, and I don't care what cuisine or style that is. We just want to make it happen.
Yeah, so it does make it harder in the fact that you have to have different manuals,
Sure, sure.
right? With different logos and some different verbiage and some different wording and all that. But it's like 90% of the same stuff,
Okay.
right? And so again, start with hiring. You bring on the right team members, things just help take care of themselves a little bit better. You give those team members the water. So, my job is to like, as a CEO, I have a couple main jobs, two really. One is to hire incredible people and create awesome teams with those people, and then to open more stores to give those people more opportunity. Right. So I have to architect a greenhouse that allows all of my plants in that greenhouse to grow. And greenhouses provide the right humidity, the right water, the right fertilizer, everything, and pull weeds that need to get pulled, and make sure that you plant the right plants beside other plants that are complementary so that you aren't hurting one plants with other plants, and manage pests and, all that stuff. Like that's a perfect metaphor for what I do in our company. And so like, it's super important that we find those right people, because then the hard work is no less hard, but it becomes a lot more simple, right? And I think that a lot of things are less complicated than we try to make them in our heads, and I'm probably as at the top of the list on making things complicated. A lot of things
Sure.
are simple, but they're not easy. And so if we distill things down into 3, 4, 5 bullet points like we try to do at every level of our organization, those things are scalable, right? And so yeah. I mean, look, obviously all of our recipes, all of our products and all of that at a Mexican restaurant is going to be different than at Little Betty Steak Bar.
Yeah, sure.
But the way in which we do inventory, the way in which we log all of our finances, the way in which we handle, our recipe development and putting those out, it's all the same, right?
Yeah.
And so we try to keep things as similar as possible. But then there's obviously changes that have to happen. But yeah, it's not the easiest way to do it. That's for sure. Definitely not the easiest way to do it.
Well, I'm a Birmingham guy, so all the Birmingham places I think are great. If anybody's Atlanta based, go check out Revival's places there. But I do want to say, it's end of April as we're recording this. I have the opportunity to go to Little Betty for the first time early May.
Okay.
I haven't been to Little Betty yet. I'll be there early May.
Okay. Nice.
So I just want to know from the CEO's perspective, what do I need to be looking for on the menu when I hit up Little Betty for the first time?
Well, that's such a difficult question. One thing that we really pride ourselves on is developing menus that multiple personality types and taste profiles and whatnot can approach.
Okay.
And make it approachable for kind of anybody. And for me, like there's so for example, I'm a New York strip guy.
Okay.
Right? A lot of people will talk trash about the New York strip.
I can
think that
respect it. I can respect
Ribeye's
it.
a little too fatty for me. Filet, I need more flavor than that. So our Wagyu strip is primo. It's from a company out of Harwood, Texas called Heart Brand Beef. It is 100% American Wagyu. A lot of Wagyu is crossbred with Black Angus. This is not. They're one of the few places in the U.S. that has 100% Wagyu, and it's an incredible steak. It's my favorite steak. And if you're going steak, that's where you go. The chicken Milanese is incredible if you're not going steak. So let's start with the big guys, right? The entrees. If you're going to, we also have spring menu changes happening right now. So some of the stuff may not be the same when you go. But our pappardelle pasta is like, it's unbeatable. It's a white bolognese instead of red, so it's cream sauce instead of tomato. Got some truffle, got some spicy sausage. I mean, it's just all things that are good in there. From an appetizer perspective, our tuna crudo is incredible. Believe we have the hamachi crudo with some of the fresh strawberries just south of Birmingham, which is absolutely dynamite too. The burrata is another starter that's kind of lights out.
Yeah.
So we get
My
our
wife will
burrata.
like that.
Yeah, so we get our burrata imported from Italy every week. It's made in Puglia there. So it's Pugliese burrata. So it's really a lot of burrata you get here is kind of tight and kind of dense. This is super loose. So when you cut it open, it's like it spills out onto this beautiful Hart's grilled ciabatta. Got a little pesto on it, got a little dill oil and truffle honey over the top, and then some of our little special house tomatoes that we cook off that are just dynamite. So that's kind of a load there. And then get the banana Foster's cheesecake. That's a game changer.
Okay. Well, hey, look, I'm glad to see the guy who at the end of the day is over all of it to be that excited about to tell me what to get. So I do feel really good about the experience I'm going to have.
Absolutely. It's fantastic. And then you got to go taste C-Bar.
Yeah.
Which is the seafood cousin of Little Betty Steak Bar. And it's that concept is defying all expectations, which is a great thing. So we've had some incredible feedback on that. So excited to see that brand kind of take root and develop itself in the community as well. So if you like,
well, good.
If you like, it's more of the Japanese heavy influence style instead of the Italian influence, which Little Betty kind of has both of those run in parallel. It's some pretty incredible dishes there.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to making my way to both of those. Jamey, I can't thank you enough for joining me and getting to talk a little bit, kind of hear about your story and then also the obvious passion you have for what you're doing. I usually like to end my shows by asking the guests one final question as we wrap up. This is Southern Fried. We talk to people from the South. If one day you and I switched places, for some reason you wanted to host the Southern Fried podcast, who is somebody that you think I've got to get on the show and you're going after them to appear as a guest on Southern Fried?
The greatest Southern food writer, show host, et cetera, Alton Brown.
Okay. Good one.
Also a UGA grad.
Of course. Of course, y'all are everywhere.
Yeah, he's probably one of the more inspirational and educational guys for me being young in this, a decade ago, 15 years ago. His show, what was it called? Food Science?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Dude, that because I'm kind of a science math nerd on the side. So it really tickled my brain. So Alton Brown.
Good answer. Well, Jamey, thanks for joining me. I was glad to get to talk to you for a little bit, and I just appreciate getting to hang out.
Absolutely, man. Great talking. Great to get to know you a little bit as well. And, let me know your feedback when you visit.
Will do. Have a good one. Well, that concludes this episode of Southern Fried with Jamey. Hope you guys enjoyed getting to hear about him, his life, and starting Revival, and what that looks like to him, and how he bases his business off genuine hospitality rooted in Southern culture. If this is your first episode, hey, go leave us a review. Go follow us on social media or on Spotify, Apple Podcast. download an episode or two. It really helps us grow and get the word out there with what Southern Fried is doing. We want to continue to explore the South through its people, and so that means reaching as many people as possible so we can hear more stories, get more people engaged, and continue to grow what we're doing. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and y'all, come on back.